Hi, and thanks for watching Dirtbike Magazine's 2020 Dual Sport video series. Now we've got the Husky FE501 Dual Sport. This year, Husky redesigned the bike, not from scratch. You'll notice it looks mostly the same as the previous model, but it does have a new stiffer frame, a new head, and revised suspension components. As always, there's an ongoing race between regulators and technology in the dual sport world. On one end, government agencies like EPA and CARB are making the standards stricter and stricter, while Husqvarna has to balance out those needs with those of performance. The 2020 FE501S does a remarkable job with that. The motor was loosely based on the FC450 motocross bike, but it's in a different state of tune, mostly designed around emissions and quiet noise standards. The muffler is, of course, much more restrictive than that of the FC450. Husqvarna actually went as far as to put a reed valve between the air filter and the throttle body in order to kind of dampen out intake noise for the ride-by noise test. Usually these kinds of measures result in a bike that is very lean, very hot, very difficult to ride. And that's the amazing thing about the FE450S. It's a sweet motorcycle. It doesn't backfire, it doesn't feel too lean. The EFI mapping is ideal for dual sport riding and overall trail riding. The engine is so quiet on the Husky, you get more wind noise on the road than you do anything else. Right from the first crack of the throttle, the power is very, very smooth, very linear. It does not stall unless you absolutely dare it to. As most people are aware, this is a very similar bike to the KTM 500 EXC. In KTM's case, they go with their traditional off-road chassis, which means PDS suspension without linkage. The Husky, on the other hand, uses linkage suspension just like the motocross bike. But at both ends, the suspension is much softer than motocross or racing settings. For 2020, those settings have been stiffened up a little bit, but overall, this is a very plush, cushy motorcycle. It's actually perfect for slow, tight trails, something you wouldn't expect a 501 to excel at. If you want to use the FE501S for more aggressive riding, you might have to stiffen up the suspension a little bit. In front, it uses WP's XPLOR 48 fork. This is a coil spring fork, not much like the air fork that comes on the motocross bikes. It can be good for aggressive off-road riding, but it takes a little revalving, maybe a little respringing. In the rear, it's essentially the same shock that Husky uses for the FC450, just much softer. The Husky has excellent detailing. The blinkers, they'll last forever as long as you don't crash them off. The mirrors, very durable again, but you might want to take those off, put on smaller ones that get in your way a little bit less when you go do some off-road riding. The bike has a keyed ignition, and you don't have to worry about turning off the key every single time you come to a stop. The motorcycle automatically shuts down after a minute or so of inactivity, so you're not going to drain the battery. The stock handguards are excellent. There is one item we did not like. The license plate bracket behind the rear fender tends to get sucked into the wheel, especially if you run high-profile knobbies, and tears itself off. You can actually lose your license plate if you're not careful. We relocated the rear turn signals and made that whole area back there more compact. All the parts that you need are there. You just kind of got to rearrange everything. The KTM group sees Husky as its premium make, so they add a little bit to the price of every Husky. The FE501S sells for $11,499. That's a touch more than the KTM 500 EXC, and in fact, it might be the most expensive 500 class dual sport bike on the market. Overall though, if you're a guy who wants to have a dual sport bike that is capable of being modified for competition, generally people say the Husky's the way to go. Not only because of the linkage suspension, but because the airbox boot is a little bit easier to modify on the Husky than on the KTM. Another thing that makes the Husky so good on tight trails is the fact that it's light. This bike on our scale weighs 248 pounds. That's lighter than some motocross bikes. And because of the smooth nature of the power, the bike feels even lighter than it is. Now, if you are one of the guys who has to know every difference between the KTM and the Husky, well, the list of makers and suppliers is quite long. In the case of the Husky, it's going to use DID rims, a Pro Taper handlebar, and there's the well-known difference in the airbox, where the Husky uses an integrated subframe and airbox made out of composite materials. For all of its off-road bikes, Husky uses Magura components. The front brake, rear brake, and even the clutch master cylinder are all hydraulic components from Magura. They work excellent. The brakes pretty much have come a long ways, and they can go toe-to-toe with the Brembo units found on KTMs. In terms of outright performance, the 501 is no FC450 motocrosser. It's a much milder, smoother, gentler motorcycle. But we know people that have made them into full-on race bikes. This takes a little attention to the mapping, which, again, very difficult to do. Different muffler, different air intake. If you know how to reflash the stock EFI system, good for you. But the system is designed to be tamper-proof. Overall, no one really wants to mess with a bike that runs this good as it is in stock form. The Husky is an excellent dirt bike. The only exception we'll make to that is one thing: rubber. The bike comes with Continental TKC 80 tires, which might be great for adventure bikes. They're not so good for lighter, more off-road oriented bikes like the FE501S. On our test bike, we replaced those with STI Tech 2 tires, which are fully street legal DOT approved tires, but full knobs. They work excellent in the dirt. When you do that, you actually have to add the rim locks, which come in the bike's toolkit when you get it. That throws the wheels out of balance somewhat for road bike rides, so then you're going to want to balance those out. You have to do a few things before you make the bike as good as it can be. Once you dial it in, the Husky's excellent both on the road and off-road. Overall, we love this bike. I think that comes as no surprise to anyone. The Husky 501S, considered pretty much the cream of the crop in the dual sport world. But we do have a number of other 500s in the fold right now, and we're putting together a 500 dual sport comparison. Keep your eyes open for that. It'll be coming up soon. And as always, go to dirtbikemagazine.com for all the latest news and info in the dirt bike world.